Good evening. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Cunningham Township Board for Tuesday, January 16th, 2024. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu?
Here.
Mr. Evans?
Here.
Ms. Hersey? Ms. Colasetti?
Here.
Ms. Bishop?
Here.
Ms. Wilkin?
Here.
Mr. Quisenberry?
Here.
Mayor Marlin?
Here.
Supervisor Chenoweth?
Present.
Assessor Owana?
Here. Next item on the agenda, approval of minutes from 4 meetings, September 11th, 2023, a September 11th, 2023 public hearing, an October 16th, 2023 meeting, and November 13th, 2023. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Mary Alice, seconded by Jaya. Are there any substantive corrections? Grace.
I just had one question, sorry not bringing it up earlier, for the meetings on the 11th. I think with Chandra on one of those meetings on the 11th, it said you were there in person and one by phone, maybe?
The public hearing minutes has Chandra via phone.
Yeah, sorry for the last minute, but if we want to just verify that and make sure they're correct and the same, that's all. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. That motion passes. Are there any additions to the agenda? Okay. Public participation. Does anyone wish to address the Cunningham Town Board? If so, please step up to the microphone and state your name. All right, we'll move on. Committee to verify bills.
Greetings. Good evening, and glad to see everyone here despite the weather. Okay. So this last month, in the town fund, we had $62,035.46 in expenditures. In the general assistance fund, which also includes our grant funding, we had $161,920.31. Our total expenditures for the month were $223,955.77. And I'm happy to answer any questions about the town bills before going on to the supervisor's memo.
Any questions? Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? The clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Wu?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Ms. Colasetti?
Yes.
Ms. Bishop?
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin?
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry?
Yes.
That motion passes. Reports of officers.
Yeah, thank you. Next, I just wanted to highlight a few things from the memo, and then I had sent you an extreme weather response update. I just wanted to go over that as well. So the primary announcement for this month is that we have a new digital navigator train the trainer program that has launched. The trainings will start next week. We have a cohort of 3 current or former township participants who are going to learn digital skills and mentor others as future digital navigators. And there is some paid opportunity at the end of that, as well as a free laptop. We are looking for 9 additional folks for our second cohort. So folks who are current or former township participants who are interested can email me at danielle@ctso.org. I also wanted to point out at the very end of the memo, the Independent Media Center received an arts grant for hosting self-care writing workshops. I had supported the grants process as we're targeting the workshops to township participants. And right now we have 2 workshops, Wednesday, January 31st and February 7th over lunch. Lunch will be provided. The workshops are free. And it's an opportunity to have a space for self-care and healing. We're seeing it's one of many things that you will see this year in terms of events that are focused on mental health and supporting people through kind of coming out of the pandemic and normalization, to the extent to which we will have normalization. So I just want to highlight those two pieces. I did also want to let you know that general assistance has been increased. It's recommended by the supervisors, the township officials of Illinois to track GA to the TANF amount. That TANF amount has gone up, so we saw a pretty big jump to $425 a month, which I'm very pleased with. I think because we're underspending, and we'll see that in the financial report, because we're underspending, we should be fine with that. The only other thing I wanted to point out is, we are really trying to coordinate better with both cities. I know that you all saw in the news that Old Charlie's, there was a tent community, Old Charlie's, that was cleared. We were working with a lot of those participants, and they don't have phones, so we lost track of them during the clearing. So we are going to be reaching out to Champaign. I think there's been some staff turnover there. We've typically had a really good relationship with the staff there, so just trying to make sure that we're working in coordination if there's ever going to be a displacement of homeless residents, that the township can be involved, and we're working much more closely with Strides now to do street outreach, as Strides and Township are the only two places with paid outreach. The last thing is I'm going to point out the extreme weather response. I just want to go over this because I think there are some learning pieces. So as you know, it's been real cold, and the two townships employed two paid street outreach workers. Both of them are part-time on street outreach. We were very concerned because the Stride shelter has remained full pretty much since it opened. And we've been tracking folks in the community providing street outreach services. So last week before the weather, we really tried to get a handle on how many people were actively unsheltered right then, because folks come in and out of housing, in and out of the community. And I have to say, I was shocked to count that we counted 35 unsheltered. That's 15 who regularly came to Strides asking for support. They had about a wait list of about 35 to 40, but those were regulars who were not able to be accommodated. And then there were 20 residents that we were able to actually physically locate. So we were physically in contact with 35 residents actively unsheltered, pretty much 48 hours before the storm hit. Strides expanded by 20 cots in the cold weather, as is their standard. And we ended up creating a 2-week emergency expansion of shelters and hotels. So we originally took 14 referrals from Strides, which opened up beds for some of the folks with low barrier needs. Some of the folks that we were working with, we were concerned without really significant case management may have trouble being independent in a hotel. So we kind of took folks from Strides, opened up those spaces, and moved folks in. So that got us essentially close to the 35. We did decide as an organization to have 2 staff members, myself and Martell Miller, really trying to give the rest of our staff time off, working Friday through Tuesday, traveling through the Twin Cities. And I've basically laid out the folks that we worked with. So in addition to about 10 people we were not able to make contact with for various reasons, and we suggested those folks, that the people who found them call the non-emergency police number. We were working with, about 12 folks. 2 of them refused service. The rest did engage in services. One person was a senior citizen in a wheelchair at a really bad time of the storm. I called the police 911 number for that person because I was really concerned about a kind of imminent death situation. We did have fined 3 residents in an abandoned building in downtown Champaign. So we actually increased our hotel capacity to allow for that. And there were 4 folks who were exiting days in because they only had enough money self-pay for one day. They were exiting Saturday morning, so we basically have paid for them through about 10-day process. So in the end, if you look at basically in terms of housing, Strides went from 60 to 80 beds with the cots. No one was turned away over the weekend, so I verified with them today about that. We went from 8 to 28 residents served in hotel rooms, which is a huge jump. And I really want to thank our staff for making that possible. And then that doesn't include other partners who are housing. So we have about 16 in CU at Home. I didn't have a chance to count with Salvation Army. Their numbers go up and down, but it's usually just a handful in their hotel program. I do have 5 recommendations. One is that, and I've said this, these are not new, but I want to bring this to your attention given the timeliness. One is our community should really plan for an estimated 150 emergency shelter beds, especially in winter months. That's like, if you look at the history of shelter in the community and you look at the ways in which we need to expand, I'm not talking about families, I'm just talking about individuals. For individuals, that's the target, I think. And people have asked me many times, oh, is it immigrants? Oh, is it folks from out of town? Are we seeing more people? I would say it's been pretty consistent. It's what we need, and we need to solve this problem. I'm very happy that Strides has opened up on location. So I think that's a big piece of the equation. City of Urbana helped to fund that. I think that's a really good first start. I think we need to explore 2 locations. I continue to message that I do not think that people who identify as men and people who identify as women should be under the same roof. I really think that it would be helpful if women had a different place to go. We continue to have reports of sexual harassment, et cetera, and some issues, people not staying in the shelter because of physical danger concerns. So I really think that it's worth looking at a location in Urbana. It's pretty far from East Urbana to the shelter, although we do have bus service. We need additional street outreach workers to respond to calls regarding the homeless. I will be exploring grant funding for that piece. I really think we need to look as a community. It really felt like we went into an emergency weekend and we had 2 part-time people who had both worked already 40 hours that week. And that is ridiculous. And that is an untenable and unsustainable situation. We really have to redefine what we talk about in terms of public safety. We need to understand that social workers and street outreach workers are an essential part of public safety. I think that in the warm months, we should be doing emergency preparedness. Planning needs to include homeless residents with clear organizational roles. We did have a meeting with emergency management, public health, United Way, all the providers, and we discussed this. And the problem is, and I asked people to answer the question, who's in charge of making this happen? Raise your hand if your organization is in charge of making sure that we have an emergency preparedness response that includes homeless residents and the specifics of that population. There was no one who could raise their hands. Everyone, of course, has a piece to play, right? And they are willing and excited and interested in all the entities, but there's a need to coordinate that. So I'm sorry to say I can't give you an answer as to who. I'd love it to see it be public health or for see emergency management. The cities, we have to figure out who's in charge, but it's one of those items. And I think that homeless services, police, hospitals need a coordinated plan of action in supporting homeless residents regardless of the weather. As you'll see, one of the folks walking down the street with no coat and just wrapped in a blanket claimed they were discharged from Carl Hospital. We are investigating that claim. It is a claim. We drove them to OSF for frostbite assessment. I was very disturbed by that. But it is certainly not the first time that we've had people discharged from the hospital who show up at our doorstep or at Strides who really have severe physical issues that cannot be accommodated in those shelters. So I think it'll be important to coordinate those conversations and our response. That said, I would like to say, despite the fact that it was quite a scramble, and we did find some folks who were actively out on the streets. Generally speaking, the folks that we had been working with who we were known to have as unsheltered, we sheltered, and those we found on the streets, there wasn't a single person who wanted to access shelter who did not receive it. Every person did. So I think that's my job as an elected official, and I wish I had more collaboration and resources to do my job better. So that's all.
Questions? Chris?
Thank you. First of all, Did strides go over occupancy?
No, they have been authorized by the city of Champaign to expand with the 20 cots in severe weather. And my understanding is that they're authorized to go further. They had staffing and safety concerns with going further that I would agree with. I think that 80 is a good ceiling for what they can do. So that's why they reached out to us and we came up with a hotel solution to keep them under 80. So that's my understanding. They didn't have to turn folks away. And honestly, they should receive a Medal of Honor for the work that they did over this weekend.
In your memo, you mentioned it would be better if, you're speaking, I think, for Champaign-Urbana, both towns, when you say we need a couple shelters, emergency shelters, and when you say we need 150 shelter beds, you're not saying 300 shelter beds,
Correct.
You're saying 150 for both towns, correct?
150 total.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Is there an assessor's report? Thank you. Unfinished business, there's none. So we'll move on to the annual financial report presentation. And I understand we have 2 people attending remotely for this report, or is that the next meeting?
This is,
okay.
Yes, this is this meeting.
Go ahead.
So, as usual, we have an annual audit of our books. And our auditors you have copies of the audit before you. They're printed copies. There are also copies at the clerk's office and the township, and by law, anyone can come and ask to look at copies of the audit if they would like. We've secured Lauterbach and Ammon as our auditor this year. They have representatives present on the phone, and also our operations and financial and operations director, Nicole Filia, is also on the phone to answer any questions you might have about the audit. But I believe the auditor wanted to go through a summary of the report. And I just want to make a note about the timing. Typically, the audit is due by the end of December. Both last year and this year, we secured an extension from the state on that, and that was simply because the number of auditors available to do this work has shrunk, so they are having to kind of schedule it out. So that is why you're seeing it in January, not December. Is there a representative from Lauterbach and Ammon on the phone?
Yep. Just let me know when you want me to start.
This would be a great time. Thank you.
Awesome. My name is McCade Thorpe. I am an audit manager from Lauterbach and Ammon, going on around 4 years now at Lauterbach, and can't believe it, but 8 years going strong in the world of auditing. So definitely have seen a lot, and I can definitely say a big thank you to Nicole and Danielle again for another successful audit. Also would like to say a big thank you to the board for allowing me to present tonight and for allowing me to present over the phone. I appreciate that a lot, and thank you for that. So what tonight's presentation is going to be is a high-level overview of the audit financial report, which is the booklet that should be in front of you. It's one of the 2. We will go through that. If there's any questions, please let me know, and we can go over them. And since I am doing this over the phone, I'll let you know what page number I'm on, and I'll give it about 15, 20 seconds. But if I am moving too fast, please just reach out and let me know so I can slow down. Okay, so with everything said, we will start on page number 1 in the annual financial report. Apologies, before I begin, is everybody able to hear me fine?
You're a bit quiet, so if you could if you could speak up a bit, but I think we can hear you.
Speak up a bit?
Yeah.
Okay, yep, I can do that, yep. All right, so we will start on page number 1 of the annual financial report, it is titled, there's a title at the top called Independent Auditor's Report. So what this page is, next few pages, is the audit opinion. And for fiscal year 2023, we have given the township a modified cash basis opinion, which is consistent with the same opinion from prior year. That is essentially saying we found that the financial statements are free of material misstatements and that there's no material weaknesses within the internal controls. So now we will move on to page number 5. This will be titled Management Discussion and Analysis. And so what these next few pages are, is they are essentially a high-level overview of the financials for fiscal year 2023. It avoids really the hard accounting methodology where it allows the story of the fiscal year to be told rather than through hard numbers and accounting verbiage. One nice part about these next few pages is that we provide this format to the township where the township is able to review and add in any wording to help describe certain variances, why they increase or decrease, so you can tell a story in your own words. Another good part in these next few pages is there is some charts and graphs for those that are more of a visual learner. So next, we will go to page number 12. This is the start of the financial statements. And it will be titled Statement of Net Position - Modified Cash Basis. So what this financial statement is it shows the balance sheet at a governmental activities level. So this is the amounts of all the funds put together. And if you flip over to the next page, page 13, this is once again the governmental activities, so all the funds put together, but from the income statement, it is showing the revenue and the expenditures and the ending net position. Now, if you look over to page 14, this is probably what you're used to seeing on a monthly basis. This is the balance sheet that is shown at the fund level. So we see, again, the assets, liabilities, and fund balances, but at a town and general assistance level. And you flip over to page 16. Once again, this is the income statement. As you can see, the revenue and expenditures, but this is at the fund level. So we have the town and general assistance level. So piece of information that you can get from here is that you can see that there was a 12% increase in fund balance for the town fund by approximately $149,000. So that's kind of information that you can get from this financial statement. Now, if you flip over to page number 18, you will see in the top left corner, it is titled Notes to the Financial Statement. And what these next few pages are is essentially goes step by step of our testing procedures and accounting methodology that was used to determine the audit opinion, which was the modified opinion of cash basis. It's a lot of hard accounting methodology verbiage. So if the board wants to read through and has any questions, Nicole and Danielle have both my email address, so please don't hesitate to reach out. And the last page that we will go to is page number 38. So what this is showing, it is showing the revenues and expenditures for the town fund, but there, as you can see, there is 3 separate columns. So it looks at the original budget, the final budget or the amended budget, and the actual amounts. So if you recall, earlier on, I mentioned how there was an increase to fund balance of about approximately $149,000. Looking over here, you can see where there was either certain revenue that was greater than expected, or there were expenditures that were less than expected. So that can kind of help show you how that change in that position came about. So that is it for the audit financial report. I'll pause here now if there's any questions. If there's no questions, then I can move on to the management letter.
Are there any questions? James?
Yeah, I just thank you for this this report. Appreciate the detail. I'm looking at page 23, which is
Yep.
under the notes to financial statements, particularly note 3, deposits and investments. I'm looking at a number of risk descriptions that are in this area, and a few of them indicate that we do not have an investment policy to address those risks. What they don't seem to indicate is whether that's a concern or not. The absence of a policy isn't a concern in itself if we don't have a significant amount of risk in that particular area. So I don't know how to quantify whether any of these several risks here are something that we should be pushing forward for policy on.
So the good news is that back in October, an investment policy was passed. The township did pass. And so for fiscal year 2024, this footnote will be updated now that the township has passed an investment policy. Reason why we couldn't include it in this year's financials is because it was passed after the year end. So my advice would be to wait until next year's financials, as this footnote will change since the investment policy will now be in place for a full fiscal year.
All right, thank you. That's very helpful.
Any other questions? I see no questions. Go ahead, please.
Okay, so now we are going to move on to the smaller booklet. It is titled Management Letter. Danielle, if you can just let me know once everybody's ready.
This is, yeah, I believe it's in the packet under, was it page 5, I believe? That book just fell apart, but I believe it's page 5, so.
Yeah.
And just as you're pulling it up, to respond to James's question, there were a number of policies that the board passed in September, or August or September, especially for the township growing to the size that we are with a number of grants that we're supporting for homeless services. We put those policies in place. So, go ahead.
Exactly. So,
Yep.
Okay. So
Real quick,
to begin.
I'm sorry, McKay, real quick. Danielle, everyone should have gotten a bound copy of the management letter.
Separate from the audit itself.
Yes. So there was a skinny one bound and a bigger one bound.
It was included in the packet.
Yeah, I think it was, oh, no. Here, I'm going to pass around the management letter. Yeah, I wondered why there were so many copies. So here you go. Management letter is separate. Here's a copy for you then.
Just let me know when you want me to
Yeah, I think
continue.
you, because the city council meeting will start shortly, go ahead and start.
Okay.
I think
Yep, I'll
everyone
make it
has a
quick.
packet now.
So the management letter essentially is just recommendations that we have for the township based on GASB standards or anything that we can see for best practices. So for this year, there were 7 new current year recommendations. 2 of them are new GASB standards, which GASB is the Government Accounting Standard Board that we will work with Danielle and Nicole to make sure they're implemented. The next 1, 2, 3, 4 current year recommendations are the policies, which the township has and the board has passed back in October. So in next audit, you will see that that these recommendations will be marked as implemented. There was just one fund, the general assistance, that was over budget, which the township is investigating. And then there was one prior year recommendation that was GASB 96 standard, which in working with Nicole and Danielle, we found was immaterial and did not have any financial impact on the township. So once again, management letter, it's more of either a heads up or a best practice recommendation. With that said, I know we're kind of built on time. I just want to say thank you again to Nicole and Danielle for another wonderful audit. They respond to our questions and are a true pleasure to work with. And then if there are any questions afterwards, once again, Nicole and Danielle both have my email address, so please feel free to reach out.
Did we have any questions on the management letter? Thank you very much.
Thank you again, everybody. Have a wonderful night.
Okay.
Thank you, McKay.
Okay, thank you so much. In the interest of time, you have a mid-year financial report before you that was included in the packet. So essentially, I just wanted to note, if you look at that report, we are underspending slightly. And there's a few things you can point out. One is we are greatly overspending on rental assistance. Rental assistance is a very high level need in the community. We are underspending on general assistance because there tends to be a lot of, unfortunately, low level and service jobs available in the community right now that don't end up being good enough to, high paying enough to pay for rent. But we are seeing a balance between general assistance and rental assistance. So our overall assistant budget is solid and going well. We are working to, we are going to see a pretty significant increase in our homeless services budget this month because, as I said, we went from housing 8 homeless residents to 28 homeless residents pretty much overnight. So you will see a big drop on that. That said, we do have capacity within our IDHS grant to absorb that. And so I think, generally speaking, we've been able to weather various storms, no pun intended, with the budget that we have. But I wanted to offer to the town board members, if you see things in the financial report you'd like to follow up with, I'm happy to answer any questions. You can just drop me a line. Or if you have specific questions right now, I can answer. Otherwise, that's all I had for this evening.
All right. Seeing no questions, no further business before the Cunningham Township Board, we stand adjourned. And we'll move on to the Committee of the Whole meeting, and that'll be chaired by Mary Alice Wu.